someone at Madiny Darries. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Madiny Darries. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's Madiny Darries.
Madiny Darries, like where you sell milk from. Is that what you're talking?
No. It's Darries.
Darries.
Yeah, correct.
What does that mean?
Well, look, it's a Malaysian Javanese name.
No
So
wonder
a
I
lot
couldn't
of-
understand. Right.
Yeah.
Darries, Madiny
Yes.
Darries. Tell us
Yes.
the meaning. Tell us the meaning.
I'm not too sure about the meaning, but our forefathers came to the Cape as slaves.
Okay.
From the island of Java of Indonesia.
Right.
And so I think the original film was Greece, and I think that is where the Darries came from. So yeah, we all have a very long history.
Okay,
in this country.
you need to find that out and share that meaning with us at hopefully in the near future, inshallah.
Inshallah, I'll do that.
But obviously, the caption "Let's make halal an apartheid-free zone." I should imagine a couple of people are involved here, a whole host of activists. What's it about, and how is this going to be implemented?
Firstly, I think implementation is another story altogether. I think firstly there's an awareness, because what we have halal certifiers, and I think if you look at that an organization like the NGC, they haven't got a very good record in terms of halal certification, having made a number of mistakes in the past. But I think from what we're calling for is we're saying that there's two things we're saying. Number one, many of the products are certified. For example, you have halal stamps on hot chocolate, as an example. And you have halal stamps on different products, not just meat products or dairy products. And I think we're calling for a lot more rigor and controls in terms of how those products are certified, because many of those products in the past are known to come from areas of Israel, for example. So I think that's the one thing. How do we make sure that some of these products that we take for granted are not slipping through the sort of proverbial halal net? The second thing is, we're saying that if we have a company X, and I'm not going to mention names for now, but let's say we have a company or retailer X, and this particular retailer, you walk in, they got cucumbers from Israel, they got dates from Israel, but all the chicken and the meat is halal certified. We're saying that organization is not halal for us, because when we purchase there, we are complicit in the spilling of blood of the Palestinians. So we're saying that organization must be cleared. All certification must be rescinded for that particular organization, including products that we deem halal. And I know it's a very big paradigm shift in the way we view this. But at the end of the day, it's important that we start to take decisive action. And as we as Muslims, if we and humanitarians, if we profess to be fighting for the freedom of the Palestinians, then we need to put our money in our mouthpiece, and we need to take decisive actions. Because if you call yourself a committed Muslim can never be passive in the face of injustice and oppression.
Okay, let's look at the issue from a different angle, with due respect to you and the organization. But it's something that we need to give thought to. A lot of these organizations that we're talking about may not import directly from Israel, but they have ties to Israel. They probably make huge contributions and support Israel in a very, very big way, as do we as Muslims support Muslims in other parts of the world, like the Palestinians who are going through hardship. And let's assume these are large corporates or huge organizations that employ a lot of Muslim and non-Muslim workers who truly need their jobs. And if this call of yours, or as a Muslim Ummah, Muslim community, make halal an apartheid-free zone, costs a lot of people, lots of working class people, costs them their jobs. How do we answer to them?
That's a very, very important point and a very important discussion to have, because there are undoubtedly implications, such as potentially loss of employment. And I think one is to be very pragmatic in terms of the way you typically implement something like this. And that is, let's look at one organization. Because let's face it, it's almost impossible to be able to target every organization that is guilty of having ties or transferring money to Israel or supporting in whatever way. We know it's almost impossible because a lot of these organizations are pervasive in our economy. And that's another problem, but that's a different discussion that we need to have. So I think that we very cognizant of that particular outcome or consequence, which is why we look at implementation and just target one company. And it's all about awareness. It's about awareness that you can start. You see, once you put something into the public domain and there's some sort of action towards that, you could possibly force change. So the ideal typically be to target one company and then to be able to create the necessary awareness, and hopefully out of that we will be able to move forward in a way that is in line with our goals and objectives. But we are very cognizant of potential consequences to that, and I don't have an easy answer to that, unfortunately.
Okay, let's look at the MJC, and some people would argue that being halal, and I know this is not, we're not talking about certification costs, etc., but something like this, we know in the past, small businesses have complained about the costs, the halal certification costs, suggesting that some small business aren't able to afford it. So it's either one of two things: they pay up and take a huge knock as far as their profits are concerned, or just not be registered by the MJC and then still lose business in the interim, because if there's a question mark around a halal certification, Muslim people will not, frequent or support those stores.
Yeah.
So again, the issue of certification costs will come in, and undoubtedly then MJC will also suffer losses.
Firstly, I think it's very important to understand that these halal certification bodies, in particular, for example, MJC, they derive money of our money. When we go into a store and we purchase a product that's halal certified, they make money from our purchases. And so it's important to understand that. And again, it comes down to a matter of principle. We can talk about the money, but until we start to put our principles and our values before money, we will never progress, we will never move forward, we will never create change. If you just look at how the system of apartheid was dismantled, there was very strong sanctions against the country, and it was the implosion of the economy that forced change. And I think we mustn't fool ourselves. It's all about the money. This is what it's about. And as soon as you start to close the gap slowly, people start to think differently, and you are able to start to force change, to force transformation. So I think from an NGC perspective, yes, they could potentially lose money, but at the end of the day, it is about making the sacrifice in order to be able to achieve what we purport to believe, and so that values and that principles and that objectives is more important.
You also indicated that it's not going to be possible to boycott a whole host of different businesses because it's time consuming. It would also mean labor intensity on your part as an organization. So you're going to take it a step or one company or one organization at a time. So who's the first company you have identified? How are you going to start this action against them? And you also realize you might be opening yourself up for obviously legal action.
I think firstly we have not identified any companies yet. The next steps now for us to do is to be able to engage and work with BDS, because what is very, very important, like you said, is you could open up yourself to potential legal action. So what you want to make absolutely sure is you want to make sure that the products that you've identified and the organization that you've identified, there's clear evidence that they have links, that they've been supported, and that they bought product. So I think some time needs to be spent in order to be able to make absolutely sure that we identify exactly what those products are, and, for example, which organization is sort of the most guilty of that sort of behavior. But what I want to say is, if we look, there's been a big outcry against Clover, because we know that it's an Israeli organization. But if you really look deep into it, you're going to find that who packs Spar's in-house brand milk, who packs Pick and Pay's in-house brand, or even Woolies, or even Checkers. You could very well see Clover, and there are leanings towards that. So this is a very pervasive issue, and there's no easy answer. But the important thing is that we need to start taking decisive steps to get to a point where we can have sustainable action that is really meaningful in order to create change. Because every time there's a war, or not a war, every time the Palestinians are oppressed and killed, we have these huge marches, which is very important. But then it fizzles out. And what happens is everything kind of goes back to normal, and we make the same choices in terms of where we spend. We need to make different choices, and it's not difficult. I mean, if I go, instead of buying at let's say, Pick and Pay or Woolies, whatever it is, there are many other community businesses that you can support. We just need to make the choice and the decision to spend our money differently. That's all we need to do, and it's not difficult. And because what happens is, especially us Muslims who are of the privileged class, we like our comforts. And it's very difficult for us to step out of our comfort zones. And I'm calling all of those upper class Muslims, I'm calling them out, to say that we need to develop a social conscience. And we need to start to spend and make informed decisions and make different choices if we want to see change in the world. Because if we don't make change, if we don't do that, potentially even the suffering that we see around us is going to impact on us at some point in time in the future.
Okay, a while ago, a good few years ago, when there was a call for, from the Muslim community to boycott Israeli goods, etc., we got another perspective on the whole issue, and that was that a lot of these Israeli companies employ local Palestinians. That is, that's the only employment available to Palestinians in that part of the world. And by us boycotting the products here in South Africa is hurting the very people we are trying to help and support. Your thoughts?
I think that, we're always going to have these challenges. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to make sacrifices. I think if you look at, and what I said before as well, is that a lot of these organizations are pervasive in our economy, and they're strangling our economy because our economy cannot transform. So at some point, we need to make sacrifices. If we don't make those sacrifices, we are never going to be able to design the world based on humanitarian values, the world based on Islamic values. We're never going to create a world that we want to see. We have to start to make sacrifices, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, when we went through apartheid, people died. They made the ultimate sacrifice, and so we need to start thinking around those lines, as opposed to be worrying about our own privileges and our own comforts, which is natural for us. But again, we need to work towards that goal and that objective, and we need to make the sacrifices along the line, because those sacrifices are only temporary for a permanent outcome.
Okay, Madiny, my final question to you this morning is, how far down the line are you? We are aware of the fact that you are a social activist based in Cape Town. Together with other activists, you're calling for Halaal to be made an apartheid-free zone. Have you only just started conceptualizing this whole idea, or are you halfway there already?
No,
implementation.
We've only just started to engage other Palestinian interest groups in order to be able to see how we can make this a practical reality. And so we in the first phase of this particular initiative, But like anything, it takes time, it takes engagement, it takes research and investigation to make absolutely sure that the way we do this and the way we approach it and the way we want to implement it has the least impact in terms of all the consequences we have spoken about this morning.
Inshallah. Madiny Darries, you are a social activist based in Cape Town, and we wish you lots and lots of luck going forward. Inshallah, this will become a reality not only for you, but for the entire Muslim Ummah globally. Jazakallah for being with us on air this morning.
Jazakallah. Alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you